Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I wanted to make a kind of chill, like Sunday feeling video today, and I thought I'd do something a little bit different. I don't think I've ever done this before, but I'm just going to recommend some of the best films I've watched in 2021. I'm just going to do 5 because I haven't done this kind of video before. I'm not sure if people will be interested. Not all of these films came out this year. Obviously, I think in general the film world has had to either adapt and make different kinds of things or put things off for the last couple of years. So these are 2019 to 2021 releases, but they're ones that I've watched for the first time this year. I do think it's interesting, like thinking about film more generally, about the types of films that have been made this year and the way that people have had to make things differently. But I'm just going to go with the 5 I really enjoyed, just for a little quick fire video recommendations. So the first film I want to recommend is Babyteeth. Babyteeth is a film which looks at the relationship between a very unwell teenage girl and a sort of drug-addicted boy that she befriends. This film is absolutely heartbreaking. So Tom and I watched this one together, and Tom doesn't cry a lot because of his medicine, but we were both in floods of tears at the end. It's incredibly moving. The way that it's shot is beautiful. There's lots of colours there. The relationships felt very genuine, very real, and sort of, I suppose, quite challenging. So the kind of relationships that's being built is one that you might not necessarily agree with, but you can still see the value within the relationship. It is a gorgeous little film. It's Australian. If you haven't heard of it, I would definitely recommend. Then the next is a horror film which falls into the genre of the way we've had to work the world differently with COVID. I think lots of people have seen this one, but I wanted to recommend it anyhow. It is Host. So Host is a horror film told through Zoom. I thought that it would be far more gimmicky than it is. I watch quite a lot of horror films. But I actually found it to be really well done for what it was. And I don't often get that scared, but I found like it was quite chilling. I felt like the concept was well executed, and I think it didn't feel like too COVID-y to be off-putting. Like the fear was something else other than the fact they were zooming all day. Yeah, it is around a group of friends who decide to set up a Zoom party one night to do a kind of online seance between them. They begin the seance and the woman who's running it loses connection, and we follow the impacts of that on, all told through laptop cameras. The next one is a documentary, probably the next like highest thing I watch, apart from horror, is documentaries. And this is Richard Jewell. This tells the story of a man who was a security guard and alerted people essentially to a bomb threat at the Atlanta Olympics, and we follow the case that spun around him as a potential person of interest for the bombing itself. This again was so moving. I thought it was like just beautifully done the whole way through, and the kind of feeling of sort of true crime mixed with these events. I mean, it is, rather than it being sort of live video, it is shot throughout, but it's just brilliant. You felt so much for the characters within the film, and I'd not heard the story before in terms of what was happening to him, and I really enjoyed the process of watching. Another film that was also very emotional, but this one wasn't as like tear-jerky as Babyteeth, is Dick Johnson Is Dead. This film is about a man, Dick Johnson, and his daughter, and I think in some ways it's as much about his daughter as it is about him. But she is a filmmaker, and she has asked her father to help her film this documentary thing about his own death, through kind of these quite like comedic like stagings of his death, but also exploring the fact that one day she won't have her dad anymore and how will she cope with that. But she's doing that sort of preemptive grieving with him in her life. It was very touching and a very kind of different exploration of what that grief process looks like. I know it's come highly recommended in a lot of places, but I just really enjoyed it. And then the last one I have to recommend, and this is what kind of prompted me to make this video today, is Inside, Bo Burnham's Inside. I've watched this twice. I watched it 2 nights back to back and adored it. I posted on my Instagram story that I'd watched it and just said like I cried. Bo Burnham was a sort of YouTube comedian back when I was pretty young. Like I think I remember watching him when I was about 15. And he sings kind of comedic songs online. That's what he did originally. Then he had a period of making comedy specials with a similar kind of format. And this is him doing what he does whilst COVID is going on. And I don't want to say too much. So for people who know him already, or kind of know like the kind of comedy he does and the ways that he's funny, it's a very kind of acerbic wit, definitely that kind of quickness with language. But this film is more about what isolation and the mental health impacts of COVID does to the human mind than it is anything else. I adored this. I said to Tom that I agree with some of the reviews calling it a masterpiece. I think this is so special. And if you haven't seen it yet, or like maybe you're expecting it just to be like fairly light, I would just encourage you to think again. I think it's brilliant. And Tom asked me when I'd watched it the first time, he's like, oh, do you think it's gonna like fly under the radar? And I was like, no, I really hope not. So if you haven't heard of it, or you'd heard of it and were expecting one type of thing and maybe you weren't like fully convinced, I would definitely say to give it a shot and see what you think. Yeah, so that was just 5 films I've liked this year that I would recommend. I know I've never done a film recommendations before, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Let me know if you are interested in me doing sort of semi-regular stuff on what films I've watched, or shouting some out if that's of any interest at all. I definitely read more than I watch, but I do watch a fair amount of films throughout the year. So yeah, it'd be interesting to know whether this is something you'd like to see in future. I'll see you guys again soon in my next video, and look after yourselves until then. Bye!